Hey there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back again. The Rugby Scoop podcast hosted by myself, Pila. Not by myself, of course. I'm joined by Vuyo, who just recently landed in Russia today. Jade, all the way from Bloemfontein. Gentlemen, this is a live recording. Thank you to our listeners as well. I see some usual faces online. Vuyo, how was the trip, man? Have you landed safely? How cold is it in Russia?
How's it, gents? It's always long, brother. It's always long. So yeah, it's bloody cold. It's probably minus 15 or 16. But it's quite tough here.
Yeah, coming from the heat all the way to the cold. Jade, hopefully the connection is good. Hopefully you can hear me. How are you doing?
I see he's a listener, so
Yeah.
I don't think he's connected.
Once again, Earth to Jade. Anyway, without wasting any time, gentlemen, we've got plenty to cover, so much to cover. Just finished watching the Lions versus Ospreys game. Lions losing it at the death. We've got the Anglo-Welsh or Welsh-English league that everyone is talking about in the UK. There's transfer rumors about Peter O'Mahony. There's Louis Rees-Zammit going to the NFL. Jamie George being selected as the English captain. Wales naming a 22-year-old as a captain as well. I mean, there's so much and plenty to talk about. Looking at the Stormers beating Stade de France yesterday away from home, securing a top 16 or round of 16 playoffs. Plenty. We've got Joe Schmidt also selected as the Australian rugby coach for the next 2 years. Hopefully, he will still continue post 2025 and actually eventually take them to the World Cup as well. But nonetheless, I see Jade is back.
Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me, Scoop?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing good.
Fantastic. Gents, I'm not going to waste any time. We've got Joe Schmidt, New Zealand. I mean, from New Zealand all the way back to Australia now. I mean, what are your thoughts regarding Joe Schmidt being selected as the new Wallabies coach after the turmoil of 2023 that Eddie Jones put Australian rugby with? Vuyo, what are your thoughts regarding this acquisition by Rugby Australia?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great choice. I think it is a tough choice, but I mean, the coach is probably up for it. He's been there and about in the last few years when he stopped coaching Ireland. So I think he will definitely be up for it, especially that he's coming from a background now that he's going to be competing with other sports, whereas in Ireland, rugby-wise, I think Ireland is probably rugby is probably number one. I might be mistaken, but to go to Australia and obviously to coach rugby and it's probably the fourth sport, if I can say. But it's going to be tough for him, I think. But he seems to be up to the challenge with what he said in the press conference, that he is looking at obviously how we can bring back that pride into Australian rugby. So I think it's going to be a tough challenge for him, nevertheless. But I think he's one guy that can probably put things together based on the fact that he's coming from those smaller countries and worked with Ireland for so long in those smaller countries. So yeah, we'll see how it goes though. I think he's gonna find it very tough when it comes to the physicality that he brought within Ireland and New Zealand.
Fair. Jade, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think he's coming in. I'm actually surprised that he took the job based on what he said when he took the consultant job at the Blues a few years ago. he basically doesn't like media work, or he tried to, shy away from media work. I'm not sure if he just wanted a sabbatical from that. And then when he came into the All Black setup as assistant coach, he did very, very few media conferences as well. So I don't know how that's changed. He has, publicly said that he doesn't really want to do a lot of media work, but obviously with Australia now, they're going from a coach who loved the media to somebody that actually tends to shy away from the media sometimes. It will be interesting to see the setup between him and I think David Nucifora as well. I think he's the director of rugby there, right? So how that works, because he's going to have a similar challenge as in Ireland, because numbers-wise in Ireland, it's that is picking up now. But when he was there was quite a big interest, in Gaelic football and hurling and all of those other sports as well. And rugby union was seen as a sport for the private school, basically, in Ireland. And it's a similar setup in Australia, but I don't think in terms of development, he will go that deep. I think that's more for David Nucifora. For him now is getting a structure and getting a setup for Australia to be competitive against the Lions, because it is a backlash. There is a lot of there's a lot of talk, that Andy Farrell took the Ireland team to the next level, where we all believe that, this was Schmidt's baby. He started the monster. So, yeah, it's a personal battle that British and Irish Lions test next year. I'm very, very excited about it. I rate him highly as a coach. I think he made a huge impact in the New Zealand setup when he was there. So, yeah, all good luck to him. I hope, right? I know that Australia, Joe Schmidt is the perfect coach for Australia. But at the moment, I don't think Australia is the perfect team for Joe Schmidt at the moment, So I hope that, they can give him the tools to work with.
Fair. Vuyo. Yeah, it actually, what Jade is talking about, it actually makes sense now to me, because David Nucifora was the Irish director of rugby. So between him and Joe, they're not they probably have a good relationship, because for the longest time they were working together, and they built that Irish team to be number one in the world for some time. So I think probably one of the reasons why they went for Joe is because of David, because he has that background on Joe. So he probably is going to protect him when it comes to the media, but obviously he probably knows that it's someone that can build Aussie rugby to be where it was back in the 90s.
Yeah, but then Vuyo and Jade, how much time do you think he will require to get Australia back to where they were in the late 90s, early 2000s? 3 years?
For me,
4 years? 6
for
years?
me, I think, look, if you're coming into that kind of setup with the Australian setup, you're already hitting the low. There's already a low bar. You can't go any further lower than what it is now. So I think we will probably see some changes in terms of obviously personnel within the team, but you'll probably see some positional changes as well. But looking at where things are, I think that the only thing that Joe would probably be looking at is if he can beat South Africa and obviously try to push New Zealand for one Bledisloe Cup, I think he'll protect himself. I think that will be already a step ahead. And obviously going into the 2025 British and Irish, what a perfect man to have the job, because he basically knows almost the background of all those systems in the UK. So, so I think, it will be tough, but I think he can only go better, because there's nothing that can happen, that worse can happen from now.
Okay,
yes, if I can add this point, it's going to be crucial now for him, to get a crop of players at his disposal. Because if we're being brutally honest, if you're going to look at what Australia has left in Super Rugby, there's not going to be much change. It's not going to be a miracle, But if we look at the Australian players lurking around and playing in the top 14, just look at that Bordeaux team yesterday. There was about 3, 4, 5 Australians in that team who are fit enough to play international rugby. So I'm pretty much sure we can pick a Wallaby team just for Australia's playing in the top 14. So it's going to be crucial if Nucifora and Australia Rugby comes together and decides, listen, let's scrap the Ghetto rule. Let's pick our best players all over the world. Let's get them together. We know Joe Schmidt and Nucifora has been used to Northern Hemisphere conditions and know the ins and outs with those teams. Let's get the best Australian team together. And then from there, we can look at trying getting those guys back to Australia, maybe, maybe a 2 or 3 year plan to get them back into Australia and then adjust the rules again. For now, they need a strong team. They need to pick their strongest team. Whether those guys are playing in Japan or playing overseas, they need to pick the strongest Australian team if they want to get this, make this plan work with Joe Schmidt.
Yeah, fair enough. Earth to Hugh Griffin. Thanks for joining us eventually. I'm sure you were celebrating the Ospreys' win against the Lions.
Yes, exactly. As much as a Scarlets fan celebrates an Ospreys win, yes.
How are you doing, mate?
I'm good. I'm doing lots of rugby stuff at the moment. So obviously I'm part of the Rap podcast family, and they are all doing their reactions to the Ospreys' famous victory. And I've got to upload those at some point over the next hour. So, but I'm here, I'm present, I'm with you, and I'm looking forward to the show.
No, fair enough. I mean, now, what games have you been catching up with from Friday till to date?
So when Europe kicked off, I was trying to watch as many games as I could, which meant at times having 2 screens going. I've given up on that. I'm not about that life anymore. I didn't watch Saracens Lyon yesterday. I wasn't really interested in that. So obviously I watched the Scarlets on Friday, and then yesterday I watched Bordeaux versus the Bulls, which was an all-time classic, which I hoped it might be, so I'm glad about that. I can't remember what I watched after that. But so I obviously watched Cardiff losing out in Racing, and then I'm going to watch the Dragons later on. So I'll watch all 4 Welsh sides, and I'm going to watch Toulouse against Bath in a minute.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to focus on the Blue Bulls versus Bordeaux. Bordeaux took their strongest side to South Africa at Loftus, Highveld. I mean, what are your overall thoughts first, and then maybe 1 or 2 key moments or key points that stood out for you? What is your overall what's your overall analysis or perspective regarding this particular game?
Well, I don't know if it was quite their strongest side. They did rest a few, so Luku and Jalibert and things went there, but it wasn't a B team. Some people said it was a B team, and it very much wasn't. I was massively impressed. There was a funny period at the beginning of the second half when it was a bit of a tri-fest, where it got a bit silly. But I was massively impressed by Bordeaux going up there at altitude and their pack standing up to the Bulls. The Bulls pack is absolutely terrifying. I hadn't realised that, is it Vessels, the hooker? He's ridiculous. He's too big to be a hooker, really. He's, I think, taller and heavier than Malcolm Marx. It's a joke. But yeah, I was really impressed. Obviously, Big Ben Taramafuna came on and gave the Bulls a bit of a shock, a bit of a treatment that they don't really often get. But the Bulls got the job done. Willie Leroux is playing incredible rugby at the moment. He is really taking on his role as the assist king, and he is spraying passes left, right, and centre. It's beautiful to watch. But yeah, a proper heavyweight clash. I would love to see these two clash again, maybe with a few more stars back on both sides, because there wasn't Aronson or Moody for the Bulls as well, let's not forget. A real statement from both sides. And, we are, I think, on this call all picked the Bulls for big things this season, and I think they're really showing it. And I think Bordeaux have gone from dark horses to red hot favourites in the competition.
Yeah, 100%. Bordeaux out of nowhere, actually. Jade, your thoughts on that particular game as well?
Yeah, Scoop. Like you said, the positive for Bordeaux, we'd look at them coming without Benu and Loku and all of those guys, and actually running the Blue Bulls in close at Loftus at altitude in blistering heat as well. I mean, the halftime or the water break was the moment for me where we saw them getting the umbrellas out. Just shows how hard it was for those guys. But I mean, if you're looking at you talking about the firepower of the Blue Bulls back, they've got a good back. Giannis has been doing well at hooker, so has Akka as well. But if you look at that Bordeaux team, replacing Carl Usari with somebody that's bigger than him, I don't know if it was possible to be bigger than Galusadi. His Galusadi a few years ago, we rated him South Africa as the biggest prop here. But I mean, you bringing on Bento Mafuna from the bench, the firepower they brought on from the bench, the Japanese international they brought on at loose forward. I mean, he had a massive impact. I really think that, Bordeaux was one of the favorites for this competition now. I saw them against Saracens last week. They ripped Saracens apart. The Bulls, it's a very good victory for them against one of the favorites in the competition. However, I don't think they will be too satisfied with the way they finished the game. I mean, I think they felt that they should have finished the game stronger. Instead, they let Bordeaux in. And we know that altitude is a weapon for the Bulls, where they tend to finish strong, especially in the last 20. But yeah, for them, this young Bulls team, I think it's another stepping stone as they're building, as we said last week. But yeah, I think Bordeaux is a team to watch in this tournament. I think for me, if I'm a betting man, which I now and then I am, I'm putting my money on this team.
No, 100%. Bordeaux are looking like the team to actually put your money on, as basically finishing at least top 8, if not top 4. Because we know the standard teams, Leinster, who played Leicester yesterday, they ripped them apart. We know Toulouse are quite strong as well in this competition. La Rochelle are quite strong in this competition. So those top 3 we usually know. But then Bulls, Bordeaux, Stormers. I want to focus on the Stormers from yesterday's perspective. They played really well. They had a very strong scrum. I actually haven't seen a dominant scrum performance in a international club competition like the Stormers had yesterday against Stade de France. Jade, you had a few comments you would like to share regarding the Stormers game against Stade de France and how strong that pack was, and maybe things that took place that maybe a lot of the fans were not really happy with. I mean, we heard the French fans from the stand booing quite a lot and whistling quite a lot, which is quite usual from a French fan's perspective. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, the Stormers were outstanding at scrum time. I think this whole season, their surprise package has actually been Sitole at Lucid. I mean, he's been brilliant as well a few times. I mean, this whole season, actually, Netlin for sure is knocking on the door for higher honours. Even when Dweba plays at hooker or if Venter plays at hooker, there's no real difference with their scrummaging. But if I'm going to hit into the game yesterday and what we take from this game, a good win for the Stormers away from home in France. I didn't expect them to come away with a W, so that means they must probably get a home last 16 game. But yeah, Luke Pierce and the officiating yesterday, where did he go wrong? What happened? Obviously, you can't blame him for what happened yesterday. You can't blame him. He blew according to the rule. Whether or not you should have taken a rugby decision with the second yellow card, and awarded a penalty try, but what does the rule state? So the 2 yellow cards they conceded in the 65th minute or so was justified according to the rules. And then unfortunately, because it was uncontested scrums, they went to 12. Now, what happened after that, and players coming back on the field and, all of that booing and the aftermath of the game, that we don't want in the game. I mean, that really puts a bad taste in our mouth when it comes to rugby, and it's not really good if you're looking at advertising the game to the public. But I can't see what technically Luke Pierce did wrong yesterday with those decisions. Yes, he could have made maybe a rugby decision and maybe just awarded the penalties right and left them with 14 men. But the rules are there. It's not for him to rewrite the rules. It's for him to interpret the rules on the field. So yeah, that's my opinion on the refereeing yesterday.
100%. Vickers, you want to chime in on this one, and then Hugh, you can jump in after that.
Yeah, I didn't. Can you guys hear me? I didn't watch the game. I didn't watch the game, but I was about to start it, and I just passed out in terms of the travel. But what I heard is that it was a lot of 20-year-olds. I think they started the in and out right wingers at centers, in and outside center. They started an 18-year-old at wing. So I just wanted to find out, because obviously the game was in France. It's still an away game, which is the Storm has picked up some good points there. I just wanted to find out from the rest of the group, which is of Jade, you, yourself, Scoop, and Hugh, what really, how did the Stade Francais team look? As much as we see that the Storm was won and dominated the scrums, but how did they win?
Fair enough. Just to give you, from my perspective, I mean, the Stormers also pretty much started off with their, not saying I would like to call them sacred stringers, a few players that are not usual starters, and their bench was with, and then on their bench they actually had the first line players. What they did well from my perspective was the amount of the amount of pressure that they put Stade de France under with the youth players that came on that were starting the game was very good. The guys did their primary roles quite well in that game, defensively, on attack as well. They did well within the scrum set piece element in the first and the second half. What basically changed the game a wee bit was when the Stormers bench came on. I think Stade de France had just scored a try to take the lead, and Stormers had to come back into the game. Once those starters, the genuine starters, came on, they really put a balance to the game as well. First off, maybe they were throwing the ball a bit too much. Gelant at the back, once or twice he would look good, and then once or twice he would also look bad or out of position or making a wrong decision. But there wasn't a bit of balance on that aspect. With Stade de France, I'm not really familiar with their players, but I know that they're number 3 on the top in the top 14. So which means they're a very strong side as well. I saw Rory Cockett playing for them because I last saw him play for Castres, and also he was in the coaching staff of Castres last season, and then now he was starting for Stade de France. But that's just the general outlook of the game without really going into any much detail. And then the scrumming element, where there were 2 yellow cards within the loose forwards. I mean, that was just the rugby law being applied accurately by Luke Pearce. I think maybe the 4th or 5th official kind of let him down in that game, because with the counting, Luke Pearce is supposed to focus on the game. And the people outside, which is the AR1, assistant referee 1 or 2, are supposed to assist him in terms of counting the numbers and making sure that everything is 100%. But that didn't seem to happen, because he had to stop the game and count the numbers, play, and then stop the game again and count the numbers, which for me felt like there was no real coordination within the officials. So Luke Pearce was kind of left to dry, and it kind from a person that's sitting from the outside, you might think this is it looks like a circus, because he's having to stop and play and count numbers, etc. Whereas the assistant referees could have just assisted him in that perspective. And unfortunately, when it comes to yellow cards, and you can't scrum, or especially if the yellow cards are within the props element and you can't scrum, you tend to have to lose players, and it's uncontested scrums. And that's the rugby law in that sense. Hugh, you can add something to this.
Yeah, just to come in on Stade Francais. So I watch a bit of top 14, and I have watched a fair bit of Stade. They are, or SF Paris, as we should call them, as they call in France. They are not the most pleasing team on the eye. So yes, they get results, but it's all about forwards and dominating you that way. They don't. It's a big misconception about French rugby that everybody is Toulouse or Bordeaux. Normally, most top 14 games are played between the 10 metres, and they're just smashing into each other. And that's very much Stade Francais' way of playing. In terms of what happens in the incidents at the end of this game, I completely agree. It's not. I've seen people saying, Luke Pearce should have communicated better. Luke Pearce stopped the game and said to the players, you need to do this. I'm not sure how he could have communicated any better. For me, there is criticism and questions to be asked of the management staff of Stade Francais. For us as fans, it's quite a niche and unusual rule that we don't see used very often. Stade Francais players and managers should know what this law is, and they should know that it's got to go. So you saw like the Stade Francais captain was going over to the team manager and shouting at him and saying, we need to do this, we need to do this. And whether the Stade Francais staff were trying to just play dumb and maybe try and get away with it or something, I don't know. Or they just didn't know the rule. For me, EPCR needs to be getting on the phone to Stade Francais and saying, the fact that this descended into a bit of nonsense is your fault because you either didn't follow the law or you didn't know it, neither of which is acceptable. So for me, that's where the blame lies for the match going strange. And you could see that it unsettled the Stormers as well, because the Stormers nearly lost. Like, there was a couple of marginal calls that went the other way down in the Stormers 22 right at the end of the game. But it was the last play of the game was incredible from the Stormers, the way that they smashed Stade Francais backwards and backwards and backwards and drove them from their own try line to outside the 22, and then obviously got the turnover. Yeah, huge result for the Stormers, and I'm glad they get a home game in the round of 16, because I love watching games in Cape Town.
You need to check your bank account and see how much your flights are. And yeah, I think it would be lovely for you to go watch a Stormers game in the summer, of course, not in the winter. Don't think Cape Town is a very nice place in the winter. Speaking of round of 16, who are your not favorites, but who are your teams within the UK element that you think have a possible stake in the round of 16 in the Investec Championship at the moment? I know I spoke about Stormers and Blue Bulls from a South African perspective, and maybe Leinster from an Irish perspective. Not sure about Munster and Ulster, because Ulster copped a massive loss yesterday against the Harlequins. But yeah, who do you see from the UK perspective that's making it through to this round?
So Leinster are obviously always going to be the big ones. You know, I tweeted from the Pirate account yesterday that it's strange. Leinster are top of the URC and they're unbeaten in Europe, but we're all kind of going, you know, we're not that impressed by them so far this season. So it tells you how good they normally are. I don't know, because a lot of the teams who are doing well in the URC at the moment are actually in the Challenge Cup. Like Benetton are probably the second best team in the URC, and they're dominating the Challenge Cup, but they're not in the Champions Cup. Northampton Saints are surprising a lot of people. So Northampton Saints normally do absolutely nothing in Europe, but they've won all 4 games, I want to say, in Europe so far. Obviously, they had the game against Toulon, which Toulon are massively underwhelming this season. Glasgow as well, I think, will be disappointed with how their campaign has gone. Losing that first game at home to Northampton, I really think set them on the wrong path. Although they did get the win against the second string Toulon at home just yesterday. So, yeah, it feels like of the British and Irish teams, only really Northampton and Leinster are showing that they have what it takes to compete with the top. And I'm still not sold on Northampton because they haven't played a particularly good opposition, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's lean pickings. It looks like it's going to be between the French and South Africans to me this season.
Oof. The outcry from the rest of the world if South African teams make it through. Speaking of British and Irish, there's murmurs, or there's whispers in the UK, Warburton to be specific, Jim to be specific, Welsh or Anglo-Welsh League. I mean, how is this story growing legs, or is there a possibility of us seeing an Anglo-Welsh League in the near future?
So this is my least favourite topic to talk about in all of rugby. And the reason for that is because it is conversing with people who want an Anglo-Welsh League. They have their minds made up and they will not listen to any reason to suggest that it would have downsides as an idea. And what these people who want an Anglo-Welsh League, and I should say it is only the Welsh, and I would say it's mostly just Cardiff who want it. It's all about going to games that they quote unquote care about. Now, the Welsh are the odd ones out in the URC, as the Welsh don't like the URC, whereas every other nation in the URC loves it. It's a hugely nuanced and deep-rooted topic that I probably can't fully go into. Has it gotten bigger lately? No, not really. It's always been a thing. You know, there was an Anglo-Welsh Cup back in the late noughties, which was played obviously between the Anglo and the Welsh teams. Is it going to happen? Well, there's rumours of a British and Irish league coming together. However, if you read between the lines, it seems more like the Premiership teams are looking to join the URC because the Premiership is having a difficult time and the URC is flourishing. Is it likely? It feels like it is coming, yes, but that would not be Anglo-Welsh. That would be, like I said, the English joining the URC. And why would they not want that? Because in terms of money, in terms of eyes, in terms of markets, the English would want the Irish and the South Africans before they would want the Welsh because they're bigger markets with more money. So, yeah, it's in terms of Sam Warburton and Jim Hamilton. Jim Hamilton once said that Caleb Clarke was the closest thing he'd seen to Jonah Lomu, which tells you everything you need to know about his rugby opinions. And Sam Warburton, I'm disappointed in Sam because he started his career as a pundit really strong, and obviously I have a lot of love for him for what he's done as a player. But I think he's been embarrassing himself with the things that he's come out with lately that have been either incredibly naive or factually incorrect. And I think he's let himself down.
Fair enough. Jade?
Yeah, so I think you just answered the question I had, but I mean, is this push from England for this Anglo-Welsh League basically just because of the teams that went bust now over the past 24 months or so? And from a Welsh perspective, what is the reason? What's the drive? Because I can't see financially, how much of a difference it would be moving them to Anglo-Welsh from where they are in the URC. So, yeah, maybe the Welsh teams feel that if they play against some of the Pommies, they can win more games, outside of the league. Or what's their reason?
Well, David Buttress was on the Dragons Lair pod. David Buttress is the chairman of Dragons, and he said that the reason that a lot of Welsh fans want to leave the URC is because we lose all the time. And I think there's probably a bit of truth to that. So the history of Welsh rugby. Now, like I said, this is an incredibly deep topic, but the Welsh regions came about in 2003, and they came about and they immediately went into the Celtic League, which was the precursor to the URC. Some people in Wales never have liked regionalisation, and they want to go back to the old clubs with the likes of Ebervale and Swansea and Neath and Newport and Pontypool and all these places in Wales. And the URC or the Celtic League or whatever it is synonymous with that. And if you don't like regional rugby, you probably don't like the URC either, because they are one and the same in some people's eyes. So the history is that back in the 70s and 80s, the Welsh and the English teams played each other all the time. Now, the context of this is before there were official leagues. So these were technically friendlies, although newspapers did keep track of how many games each team had won and then publish like a league table, but it wasn't a proper league because they didn't all play each other, the same clubs. And yeah, so it's a history thing. Now, it's a lot pushed by some of the older people in the community who do remember those games. I was born in 1995. I have no memory of these Anglo-Welsh games from the 70s and 80s. So yeah, so there is a lot of people who desperately want it, and they feel that there would be more crowds would come to games if Welsh teams were playing the English, and it would remove things like logistics. And they say they would travel away to away games and they would get away support and things like that. So that's the argument in favour of it. Obviously, I could sit here and list all the downsides to it, but I don't think I need to do that for this audience who all love the URC. So yeah, like I said, it's a huge topic.
No, well put. I think you've given us some insight with regards to the way Welsh rugby is thinking, and obviously how the English side is also thinking regarding this Anglo-Welsh League. But obviously, for now, it's still talk. For now, it's still rumors. It's not something that's out there yet. something that is out there is the Sharks have acquired the services of Jordan Hendrickse, who is the brother of another Hendrickse, the halfback at the Sharks. But now what this means is Sharks have Cohen Bosch at first five, fly half if you prefer. They have Masuku, who they've recently bought as well, just last year. They've got Jean Smith, Franco Smith's son, who played the under-20s last year as well. They've got Chamberlain, who's also part of this group as well. I mean, how many more fly-offs do the Sharks need? Vuyo, isn't there too many players in the Sharks camp?
Yeah, brother, I don't know what is going on there because, as you mentioned, all these tens, and I'm thinking there's even Lionel Cronier in there, so it's quite rough. It's quite rough. I don't know if look, for me, you can clearly see that they're not happy with obviously Cohen Bosch and Chamberlain at 10. But the question is why then Masuku is not getting an opportunity? Because if you're signing Hendrickse, then you are saying that because all these guys are literally similar age. He's younger, obviously, but they're all like similar age in terms of like 26, 27. So I wouldn't know why they would do that. But for me, it's actually as him, I wouldn't have gone there knowing the players that are there. We know that Hendrickse was benching for Nohamba at 10 at some point because they were not happy with his performance, which is, I don't know, the Sharks even make that signing. It actually baffles me. But if you look at everything that is been happening there at the Sharks, I think they continue to just make sure to make the worst recruitment signings, and I don't know where it can go from here. But I hopefully for them, it's something to build their future team on. But look, again, then get rid of Kevin Bosch, then get rid of Chamberlain. Then it makes sense for you to sign that guy. And we know Lionel Cornet is quite old, so he's not in the mix. He's not going to be in the mix for too long. Where then Smith, the fly off, also he's a young player. Don't forget also they have is it Walter Fleece? Or he was at Marty's. I think they also have him signed at the Sharks. So I'm not quite sure what is going on there, but yeah, that's what happens.
Jade, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we need to send this podcast out to the Sharks, to the directors and to the guys and to Neil Powell making decisions there because they're clearly not listening to us. I don't know what was the need to sign Hendrickse. I don't know why he also moved to the Sharks as well. Signing so many fly-offs, but the weekend you still stick with Cohen Bosch. So that doesn't make sense as to what's the reason, what's going on there. I actually do think that John Smith will leave the Sharks. I've got to sow a feeling and inside was birth that he will be heading offshore or he will be leaving the Sharks at least. So I got a feeling that he's going to go. But I mean, there's still Masuku that they signed last season. There's so many players there. If I was Jordan Hendrickse, I would have rather looked at if I wanted to make the move to the Bulls maybe, or somewhere there where there's less much of shambles going on. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on to the Sharks. I think that it's just signing player after player, trying to paper over the cracks, and they're doing it at 10 as well now. So I don't know what's going on there. They need to make some rugby decisions there and start proper planning because it's not getting better for them.
Yeah, no, 100%. It isn't really getting any better for them. Gentlemen.
Sorry, Scoop.
Yeah?
Just a quick one. I'm seeing Dupont playing for Toulouse, guys. Didn't he take a sabbatical?
Yeah, he was supposed to have taken a sabbatical. I was also shocked. The news came in this week that he will play for another 2 weeks or something like that, or he will be available for, I think, 1 week from top 14 and then another week within the Investec Championship. Not sure about the dates, But yeah, and it made me think of what you said, I think 2 weeks ago on the pod as well, about how much time is required for a player to join into the 7 squad or the platform. But yeah, there seems to be an arm wrestle between French rugby and Toulouse as well. So I'm not quite sure what's happening within that regard, actually. Yeah, and so moving on from that, this past week, obviously, there were squads named for the Six Nations. We all understand that this week the Netflix special is also going to come out. I mean, Dupont won't be the captain for the French side this year, and obviously the French and another star player obviously was still injured from the World Cup or pre-World Cup was Ntamak, also won't be available for the Six Nations either. And I'm really curious at what you guys thought of the squads that were named, first of all. And obviously looking at the Irish side, it still looks pretty much similar without maybe Johnny Sexton. There might be a different change, obviously, within that sector. Hugh also mentioned things about Andy Farrell being the Lions coach might not be involved. He could be involved. There's also maybe some disruptions within that. But Bothwick seems to have same squad as well regarding of what transpired in the World Cup. They made the semifinals against all odds, I guess, last year. But what do you guys make of the squads and the countries? Obviously, who do you think might come up on top? Hugh, let me start with you with regards to that. I mean, you guys have named a 22-year-old as a captain for Wales this Six Nations.
Yeah, so that was what I was interested to see from Warren Gatland with this Wales squad, is because we knew he wanted to reset the squad, but I didn't know how hard the reset was going to be, and it has been a pretty hard reset. Now, Taff Jenkins being made captain is because both Derry Lake and Jack Morgan are out, who were the captains at the World Cup. The interesting thing about Taff Jenkins is that he's not a nailed-on starter. Will Rowlands and Adam Beard have been Wales' first choice second row partnership, and they've been going very well. And Gatland alluded to that he maybe doesn't see Taff Jenkins as a starter now, but he thinks he will be a starter in 3 years' time. So that will be interesting to see how that goes. Obviously, we've got a new fly half. I think Dan Bigger will be a huge miss, but I'm a huge fan of Sam Costello, the Scarlets fly half, who is now going to be Wales' first choice. I think he is an excellent player. I watched him beat England under-20s on his own a few years ago. And obviously, as a Scarlets fan, I'm always going to be backing him. So it's it will be a new start for Wales. I think Welsh fans need to be prepared to see the team struggle on the understanding that it will get better. Whereas I think teams like France and Ireland will be continuing. I think France are favourites for the Grand Slam because they play Ireland at home. Scotland are kind of continuing as well. There's not been such a hard reset for them. They didn't have a particularly aging squad. Italy's an interesting one. I'm backing Italy to get a win this year, hopefully not against Wales, purely because of the confidence and the quality that Benetton have been playing with. And I think that is something that the Italy squad will have that the Welsh squad doesn't have, is because most of the Welsh players have been losing every week, whereas a lot of the Italian players will have been winning every week. And I think that's a huge deal. I don't know whether maybe Vuyo can come in on that in a second. England, I've no idea. England, I've got absolutely no idea. If they want to continue playing as they did at the World Cup, they will be less good at that because they don't have Owen Farrell and a couple of other big boys. If they want to evolve and become a running team, then A, it's going to take them a while to take that game plan on board, and B, they're never going to be as good at it as France are. So I've got no idea with England. I don't think that they're in the running for the championship. I think it's between France and Ireland, and I'm going France.
Bold statement. I mean, we haven't even started. Okay, Jade, your thoughts on the squads?
I'm just looking now at this English squad and I'm thinking to myself, after the World Cup was a perfect time for them to reset and get a few young guys in. And I see they got Emmanuel Wazifai Waboso in. They've got a few exciting backs, Robok is in from South Sharks as well. Slade's back in the mix as well. They've got a few exciting backs, Finn Smith as well. But then you look at the few dinosaurs that's still in the team, your Danny Kays and your Dan Cole, and those guys, and you're like, okay, so what's happening? What's the plan here? What is Borthwick's plan actually? Like you said, it's going to be difficult for them to go away and move away from the rugby they played in the World Cup if they want to get results and to start to play expansively. I'm not sure this team is ready, so it's really going to be a challenge for them. Interesting enough, the French pack has me a little bit, optimistic. The size of that patch, yeah.
Sorry, Jade. I hear you and Hugh talking about England and the concerns you guys have. But I just want to throw a spanner in the works here, because if you look at the coaching staff they've assembled, they've taken some of the guys that were with South Africa's. First guy was strength and conditioning coach in 2019 World Cup. And then they've taken the other guy now who was an assistant coach.
Felix Jones.
Yeah, Felix Jones in this World Cup. Do you not think there might be some ingredients added into this English side going into the Six Nations? Then you can jump onto the French team.
Yeah, but okay, now taking nothing away from Felix Jones, South Africa, also the style of rugby we played, it's not, and the winning rugby South Africa played, it's not the expansive rugby that, we expected. Yes, ball 1 or 2 games. Felix Jones was a brilliant assistant coach as well. I think he will make a difference there, but that will take time. Scoop, it's not going to happen overnight, you can't go ahead and have those changes, but then you still have your Dan Cole and your Danny Kays still in the squad. It's a little bit, so what really are you going to do? What is your plan? There's 2 young props, that the one played on 20 last year, I can't get his name now. He's actually a real prospect. He can play on a 20 this year again. That I really, really think that those 2 guys will be, 2027, they will be up there in this English team. I can't get the name off the top of my head. Those are the kind of guys that they need to start to groom into the squad, maybe as an apprentice. If they're going to do that, then keep Dan Cole there so these guys can feed and learn of them. That's fine, but I'm not sure. I don't know the ins and outs of English rugby. But it's going to be difficult for them to go from the kind of rugby they played in the World Cup and just to go and play a more expansive game, But yeah, if I'm going to touch on France, like I said, that pack of France, we might see the French field a pack that weighs over 1,000 kilograms in the Six Nations. They've got a few big boys in that pack. I think it'll be interesting to see, how much rucks those big boys eat, what kind of game they're going to play without Dupont there. Are they going to be a little bit more structured? Because, Dupont sometimes plays on instinct. He's brilliant and he does that. But how much rucks are they going to eat? What is their fitness levels? What is it, the time? How much minutes is he going to give certain players, especially those big boys? He became accustomed to Antonio only playing 40 minutes or 41 minutes, then going off. Is he going to do the same? What does he do with Waku? Does he
Maybe
play?
Maybe go 7-1.
7-1, yeah, they can go 7-1. But those they have a big pack. It's actually interesting. Is the game changing towards that? What does the other teams do when they play against France? Do they select a heavier guy at lock? Do they select go with a 6-2 split instead of the traditional 5-3 because of the French pack? How does it affect them at scrum time? Because even though they had those big pack, they weren't really dominant at scrum time against the Boks last year in the World Cup. They really struggled against the Boks. So how do they pick up from there? That's what I want to see from this French team. I do back them to win it, even without Dupont. I'm just not looking forward to hear the commentators mention every game, regardless who's playing, that Dupont is not featuring in the Six Nations, because we heard about it already, and we're going to continue to hear about that. But yeah, I think France will win the Six Nations. I think Ireland might just hit a speed bump this season. I'm not saying they will be all pear-shaped, but I don't see them doing the Grand Slam this season. It's Ireland.
Oof. France 2, The rest of the Six Nations, 0. Vuyo,
Scoop,
you
just a
might
quick one on Ireland. Just a quick one. I just had it written down here. A few months ago, I spoke about them integrating Ollie Jagger into this team from the Crusaders. He was, a few years ago, Ireland toured New Zealand, and Ollie Jagger was approached Ireland had a shortage at prop, and he said no. He was one of the biggest surprises this year because he was the first name on the Crusaders team sheet. Throughout Razor's reign, he's always been this tight head. He's always sticked and backed him, and the guy moved on to Monster. So I think he must have had a conversation with Razor where Razor said that, okay, you can move on. You will maybe be third or fourth choice tight head in New Zealand. He's a real prospect. I see he's a part of the squad as a training panelist. I think that he's one to keep an eye on in this Ireland squad. I think he's going to be a quality tight head, and it will help Ireland because last season there was a big difference when Furlong and the other guy's name Portier went off. There was a big difference in their pack. I think this season now that they have Cian Healy fit again, and they have Ollie Jagger there as well, and he will come into the squad. I think that's a big difference in this Irish team. It's a positive for them.
Fantastic. Excellent stuff. But still, the question or the statement remain. Hugh went with Ireland. Goes with France. Jade is going with France. Vuyo, your take with these squads?
Look, I'm split in between. I'm on 50-50 on this one. I'm on Ireland and France. I'm on 50-50. I'm going for a split on this one because I can understand. Yes, look, France, they've obviously retained quite a few of their guys and who are performing top performers in the World Cup. And if we look at now, for example, some of the French teams are not. I'm not quite happy with La Rochelle. I don't know why. Obviously, it's not like the exact team. Toulon obviously hasn't featured. We're looking at the way that Toulouse is playing. I think, look, the French have still got what it would take to win it, and I think that's as Hugh said, it's going to come down to that game where they're playing in France between Ireland. So between them and Ireland, who wins it? So for me, I think it's a split. I'm a split on this one. I think maybe once we start watching a few weeks of Six Nations, we'll maybe more or less change our opinions, or maybe keep it the same. Who knows? And then if England, as Jade said, Jade was spot on. They're not going to change the game plan just because they're not going to change the game plan just because of someone who's coming in now working with the players a few weeks before actually they start the tournament. So it's going to be more or less what we saw in the World Cup, especially now with Faz out. So which means that if they do go with 4 to 10, it's going to probably be the same situation. Then I look at Felix Jones in terms of his background. His background, he was with Rassie at Munster before Rassie moved to the Box. He was contracted at the Box 2019. He was sort of working with in and out of the squad in terms of following the players in Europe if they're happy and all of that. So he wasn't really much in influence in the game plan, but he was influential in tagging players and making players understand on the plan. So if
I think Russia is going under load shedding as well, guys. Yeah, Vuyo, can you hear me? No, he can't hear us. He's gone offline. But nonetheless, gents, obviously covering those elements of the squads themselves, there's also a particular aspect or particular focus that I also want to bring into your guys' attention. Understanding, obviously, the team, every club or every nation has to choose certain captains going forward. But from my perspective, I think obviously choosing a young captain going into this year and obviously building for 2027 is probably the ideal way of going about things. I mean, I look at what England have done. They've chosen quite an old captain. I mean, going into this the Six Nations. Pom is also being selected into the Irish team. I thought, man, why not choose Van der Fleer, for example? I mean, he's a young guy, he'll still be around. I mean, Pom is what, 34? Jamie George for England is what, also 34, 35. By the time it's 2027, the guys will be much older, right? So, yeah, what are your guys' thoughts in terms of leadership aspects? I mean, Antoine Dupont is not there. You've got Gregory Aldrich as a guy who's stepping into the French side. What are your guys' thoughts in terms of going into 2027 and maybe starting to rebuild? I know a lot of you guys mentioned the aspect of you thought England might start rebuilding. You thought maybe a few other teams also might start building. Wales seems to be the only side that's actually looking prominent in terms of building. They might not be good this year. They might not be good next year. But maybe looking at 2026, getting into 2027, they might be in a very strong position. We would have built up enough caps and enough foundation and a platform to actually surprise in 2027 in Australia. Hugh, what are your thoughts on Jamie George being the captain of the English, Pom being the captain of the Irish side, and Aldred for France?
I think Peter O'Mahony is the obvious choice for Ireland. I think it'll be interesting to see whether he reins in his antics on the pitch, which was the role that he was able to fill in not being a captain. Maybe he will, maybe someone else will take up that role. The other player that was in the conversation was James Ryan, who we saw, I think, maybe blew his chances out in La Rochelle when the referee said, "I'm not talking to you anymore, I'm going to talk to Gary Ringrose instead." So I don't really have necessarily much of a problem. And, don't forget that Johnny Sexton was going until he was 38. So if Peter O'Mahony is either going to be a stopgap or is looking to get to the next World Cup, I'm okay with it either way. Jamie George, I mean, he's guaranteed his place in the team. We saw that Borthwick would rather leave Jamie George on for 80 minutes or at least 75 minutes rather than bring on another hooker. Now, it might be slightly different with Luke and Dickey coming back. England have often brought through new players. The problem with England is they bring in a new player, they put him in for 2 games, and they take him out again, and he's never seen again. That was the characteristic of Eddie Jones's England, especially with wingers and things. They used to give them like a game or 2 and then drop them, and then that was it. They were done. Like I said, I don't really know what to make of England, like I said earlier. I think Warren Gatland is kind of overly going with it now because of the mess that he inherited from Wayne Pivac, and Wayne Pivac's selection policies were very confusing and left you scratching your head a lot. And Wayne Pivac brought back a lot of old players that Gatland had already moved away from. So, I hope that wasn't too much of a ramble. I hope that answered the question.
No, fair enough. Jade?
Yeah, no, you said it spot on in terms of Peter O'Mahony. I think Ryan, the game against La Rochelle, it was basically where Farrell saw that, okay, this guy still needs to learn as a captain. Maybe it's a 2-year plan and then Ryan takes over from there, or Ringrose, whoever, does put up their hand for Leinster as a captain. I think in terms of France, it's a given. Aldred has been the captain when Dupont's off the field. He's been the leader for La Rochelle as well. He's a world-class player. He's somebody that you can count on as well. It will be business as usual for him. Wales, the one I think the young captain they have there. What happened to Jack Morgan? He's injured, right? The captain from the World Cup. He's injured, yeah. So I think that's maybe Jack Morgan will stay on as captain when he gets back. I see Scotland went for a co-captain. I think Van Russell, and I can't get the other player's name now. They're the co-captains for the Six Nations. They went the co-captain route. And then England with George. I'm not sure how much minutes George will play because, Coward Dickey is back. But interesting, I really thought that Maro Itoje would be more as put his hand up for leadership, and especially at Saracens or at England. I thought maybe he was somebody you could look at being a captain with Farrell not being there. But he hasn't put his hand up, or they haven't looked at him at club level or at a national level. So it's actually interesting to know what is the reasoning behind that as well in terms of Maro Itoje, because I really thought he would be one that, throw his name into that for the captain. I thought a few years ago when he came on the scene with the British and Irish Lions series in 2017, I thought he would be a future captain for the Lions, not just for England. But yeah, he hasn't gone that route, so actually disappointing. But yeah, in terms of captaincy, every every coach has their, their favorites and their flavor. I think there's certain teams that's looking at it differently with the Six Nations.
Yeah, fair enough. Vickers, you wanted to finish off your views regarding the squads as well.
Sorry, man. Where did you guys lose me? I don't even know. I was blabbering alone on this side.
No, I think it was the last part regarding, I think it was England, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know if you guys. Sorry, I don't know if you guys heard what I said about Felix Jones. Just in terms of how
we didn't hear that part. Maybe you can start there.
Like I said, Felix Jones came from Munster with Rassie, and then most of his job within the Springbok setup was to obviously just tag a couple of players in terms of the kick chase, see what they can do, see what they can improve. So he's a perfect guy, obviously, for England at this point because of the fact that that's the game plan they're going to be playing. So yeah, I think if we look at that, just alone on that, so I think it will be more or less something similar. And for them, if that is what they're wanting with Felix Jones to come and do, that's perfect game plan. Probably they're going to go with forward again at 10, so which is not going to change much in terms of what we've seen in the World Cup. And then I think just on the rest of the squads. When I see basically Italy performing, Benetton performing, and taking that to the national team, I don't think it's going to be the same. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be the same in terms of Benetton because the personnel changes, the personnel changes, the pressure changes. So you're coming from a club background where it's quite free, it's quite open play. Let's play, guys. And then into a setup where it's going to be more controlled and more focused on winning. So I don't know if that will be the same performance that we've seen from the Italians, but obviously they will be gunning that one or two games, as Hugh has said about Wales. Hopefully they don't beat Wales, but that's what they're going to be probably gunning for. And then definitely with looking at Wales will probably be looking at the 2 wins at least the 2 wins, which is probably Scotland on an off day and then Italy. And then the rest is probably going to go down to, like I said earlier, it's going to go down to that last game, that game between Ireland and France.
Yeah, also not forgetting within the Italian aspect that they've got a new coach as well. I think Gonzalo Cuseda or however you pronounce his surname. Sorry for my pronunciation. So yeah, it should be a new environment. I mean, there's new foundation, new philosophy, because I think we were quite used to Kieran Crowley and the way the Italians played. It will be very interesting to see what changes Gonzalo is going to bring into the system, into their rugby as well. It's going to be quite interesting because looking at how Italian sides are performing well now at URC level, and also now performing very well at the EPCR as well. So let's see what the national team will offer for us in the Six Nations. Gentlemen, we're not going to continue any further. Thank you very much for your times. There's plenty of rugby to watch. So the Sharks are on in the next hour. So that should be a good game to watch. But yeah, thank you very much to our listeners for joining in. And Abizindo Wanga scrumming fly off. Always a pleasure to have you guys listening through. Thanks Vuyo, thanks Hugh, thanks Jade. I'll see you guys next week, Sunday, where we will be dissecting all things rugby, everything rugby, no holds barred. This is the Rugby Scoop podcast. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Cheers.
Cheers,
guys. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.